Hello. Thank you so much for doing this interview with us at Phillips Theological Seminary. Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are, your artist, artistry background and things of that nature?
Halito sa po Kristin Gentry, Choctaw Siya. Hello, my name is Kristin Gentry, and I am Choctaw. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation here in Oklahoma. My tribe is originally from the Mississippi area, and then after Indian removal, we were placed in the southeastern part of the state here in Oklahoma. And today it is the Choctaw Nation here. So that's my cultural background. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at St. John's, in the 80s. And then I grew up there, went to high school, graduated from Berry Hill High School in West Tulsa. And then later I ended up living on Riverside. Kind of funny, my old apartment is a parking lot for the gathering gathering place now. So
Oh,
I
wow.
love I love my hometown, so I'm from Tulsa doing that. Let's see what else. So my whole life, I can say I've kind of been involved in the arts even before it was my choice. As a young child, as a baby even, my grandparents were, my grandfather was like a carpenter type wood carver, but then he was also an artist, a fine artist. And he's one of the founders of the Eastern Oklahoma Wood Carvers Association. That's James Orn Hoover, non-native. It's my dad's side. And then my grandma, she also did a little bit of wood carving in their clubs. And so they did like arts and crafts markets throughout like Oktoberfest, Tulsa May Fest, different church organizations. And my mom was a seamstress. So my mom and my grandparents would booth together. And I was born in September, and by October of the exact same year, I went to Oktoberfest. And my mom would dress me up in the clothes as a baby all through. So I really did grow up as, like, an art market, like, child, going traveling, doing all those shows. I really wasn't exposed to, like, the fine art gallery world at that time, but I have plenty of aunts that were. One of my aunts, her husband was this, jewelry metalsmith in Tulsa, and she was a painter. I have another aunt that's a painter. There's just a lot of artists. My mom's mom was, and my mom was a writer. My grandmother was a writer. So lots of arts and writing was all in her. I grew up in that. So when I got to high school, I did a lot of art and music, and I finally settled on doing a degree in fine arts. And for me then it was I had, like, no pushback on that. It was very encouraged for me to do what I wanted in the arts. I did art education, and also no pushback for being a teacher. It was, it was a great career for my family to do and just be happy and do what I wanted. I definitely wanted to do that. I did. When I finished college, I did actually start teaching. I finished my undergrad in Stillwater at Oklahoma State. So I received my Bachelor of Fine Arts to do visual art there. And then I started teaching I taught at 6 different elementary schools in the city. And I also taught at Lincoln as well. It was an alternative high school. So I got to teach both elementary and secondary students. And that's kind of the really fast version of me becoming a nerd. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that like you going into art, even being a teacher, were like these things were accepted. Like, why do you point that out as a thing?
I point that out. A lot of people always ask, did your parents discourage you from becoming a teacher? One, because they make no money, or becoming an artist because they make no money. I get that a lot. And by the time I finished my degree, I would have professors even tell me that my art professors, that they were professional artists, but even tell me I was lucky to have, even though I'm not married now, but I was then, my M.S. degree, because they all knew my ex-husband, he's an electrical engineer. So they all felt that I chose a career based on his career path because they knew I would be okay financially because I have my Mrs. degree. So it has been like a topic. I think that's probably why I always talk about that. His career choice had nothing to do with my choice of being married to him. Had no, those two things didn't have to do with I chose those things before I knew him. Um,
Wow.
so I think probably why I say those things. People, a lot of times want me to come talk to their children and tell them either discourage them from becoming artists or teachers or encourage them to do what they love. So I get the 50-50 where people, it's the money is more important to them or doing what you love is more important. So it's just an interesting, people seem to be one way or the other in my experience.
Wow. And and within your experience, what do you say to a lot of those naysayers who are like, oh, there's no way you can be an artist or a teacher and make a living for yourself? Like, has your journey kind of showed you that it's possible or, you know?
So so far to date, I've been able to, support now that I'm divorced, I support my daughter and me, financially. I do different things. I'm a writer. I contract. I'll do commissions. I've been commissioned by different corporate entities. My tribe being one, Choctaw Oklahoma. So when any new building is built in the state of Oklahoma, they require by law the 1% for the arts. 1% of that budget will then vote for it. So when my tribe builds at casinos, resorts, things like those, I can apply for other entities throughout the state. They don't have to be native. We have what's called the Oldest Tour in Oklahoma, and you go through the application of that and get approved. And so when any company could be like Phillips, Phillips sandwich, if they're building or the organization is building things, they would be under that same type of public art law. I could apply for those because I'm part of that, what's called artist pool. So when my tribe does that, they also still have to pull from that pool, and I happen to be on that. So one of the entities that I tend to work with in my tribe ends up being Starbucks International. So I've done a couple different commissions with them for different casinos. One's in Ho Chi Town and one's in Durant. So those two separate casinos, Starbucks asked if they could have a floral artist. Our tribe required Starbucks to select a Choctaw artist, and then the state requires them to select an artist from the pool. So finding an artist in all three of those, I kind of felt like I really fell into that. Like it was me. And of course, they still had to like my art. Like they still had to think it was a right fit. So doing botanicals with coffee flowers and coffee plants with Choctaw culture integrated made perfect sense. So I'm just so, I guess, lucky, blessed that those things all lined up for me. And so that experience kind of pushed me into doing like I can apply. I felt comfortable applying for other ones. We'll get like RFQs or requests for qualifications or requests for proposals on RFP. The state will put those and cities will put those out, and I can apply. I got to do one. I did one in Arkansas that was open to states surrounding Arkansas. I've applied for one in New Mexico. Just kind of those opportunities is a good way for me to always be consistently working as an artist. It gives me the ability to um, just have that experience of working with corporations that isn't always kind of well known as artists. A lot of artists go gallery museum routes. I do that too, but
Mhm.
I just try to have as many revenue streams as I can. So for me, I have not found that it hasn't worked for me. Although teachers, correct, do not make well, don't get paid well always. Well, my first teaching job, I made 25,000 a year. So I would use art to supplement that.
Mm.
So a lot of times art has been art has been my supplement. And now this is the first year, 2025 is the first time I have ever completely went just full-time art sales, commissions, all those, writing, different contract work, and I do arts and cultural events too. So it's not only painting. I'm also photographer, so I might photograph some weddings for extra revenue, senior portraits. I might pick up some events. Just whatever I can do that I find in the arts that work for all my, I guess, assets,
Yeah.
career assets, art assets. But yeah. Mhm.
Wow. So you've been able to make it work through really expanding like your scope of opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. So that's really cool to hear, and I'm happy that you shared that because I think that can be really encouraging for people who, are wondering, can they make, their artwork, something, full time and be paid, a livable wage from it. And yeah, congratulations, on your 2025, hitting that goal. So that's really cool. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I started
so
teaching in 2011, so that's, like, almost 15 years later. It's taken me a long time to build up to that. I don't know if I would have ever made it to there if I hadn't gotten divorced. There were kinda things in my life that kind of pushed that as well, and the opportunity, where I get to have my full-time art space where I'm sitting in right now that's, like, behind me. I'm really, really, blessed that, she's not just, a business owner. Her name is Kimber Wilson Clements. We're the same tribe. She created an organization called Matriarch Fulfillment, and I became a part of that. And then now 8 years later, she had purchased this building in Oklahoma City, and every time I'd ever seen the building, I was like, "What needs an art gallery? It needs a store. It's a beautiful space for that." And she was kinda joking I took it as jokingly or just, like, play stating, like, "Okay, well, then come do that." And I'm like, "Whatever. I can't" that it just felt like way, way, way too big of an ask, like, but she was sincere, and after enough years of her finally doing that, I'm like, "Okay, let's do this." So, I'm in her, nonprofit space. It's called Culture Hub Collective. It's in Oklahoma City. It's basically what I tell people it's like a mini reservation in a way. We're building this nice little native community. We have drum circle here already. Within the arts, I can teach all the art classes I want to teach now, and I can work with like the Oklahoma Arts Council, Rhetoric. I can work with other arts organizations that have funding that may need teachers or have teaching, and so I can teach for them and we'll hold the space for it. And especially now that it's a lot of turmoil for people of color. And we're actually located in such a large it's like the Hispanic, Indigenous, Native American part of town for Oklahoma City. It was annexed. It was early on, it was a city before statehood. It was a city before 1907. So there's a lot of cultural history where I'm at, and people are just really needing that pull together. Other artists are needing places to sell art so that they can provide a living for their families. And so that's kind of what we're building all of that into one. And I'm just so lucky and blessed for that opportunity. And I get to help other artists do that now too. So
that's really cool. Wow, that's good. Okay. So tell us about the exhibit that is happening here at Phillips Theological Seminary, August 18th. And tell us a little bit about the exhibit and what people can expect from this very unique exhibit.
for this exhibition, I kind of feel like I'm in my 40s now, so I feel like it's not a retrospective for me. It's very different than that. I really have worked for the past several years a lot on my own gender identity. And that took me a very, very long time to kind of realize over time that it wasn't really a gender identity issue for me. It all came down to it was like cultural difference, cultural dissonance of how Western, non-native European gender binary kind of over had overtaken like my own cultural um, definitions and views and culture beliefs about gender, and just learning like that we had all these roles for people that were not necessarily just in that strict binary. That just it finally like in my head, I just always struggled with feeling like a woman. Um, and I'm not a trans person. I like 100% don't think that I was like, I mean, I was born genetically female, I'm still female, I'm a woman. I just didn't feel like it because I didn't fit so many of the cultural norms for what women are in the United States of America. And growing up with that, with so much of my culture that had been lost, I I couldn't even understand that as a concept until I had gotten enough reconnected with my culture, relearned enough, working with language and through my art that I realized I was like, oh, it's a cultural difference. It's not really a gender difference. So like a non-binary person in like the Western world to me is very similar, not exactly the same, but similar to what we would call two-spirit people. Our two-spirit people are people that we firmly believe embody both the masculine and the feminine into one, and our views of masculine and femininity are can be very different. Our women, without a doubt, had to be so strong to survive the Trail of Tears, to survive Indian removal, um, to keep those babies alive, to continue um, doing a lot of the cultural norms, that language, and bring that with them through, you know, concentration camp, murder. Like there's a lot of terrible things. And I'm not dismissing any of those. I just am trying to show that we have happy and positive things on this side still. Like despite all of that, we can still thrive after all of those things, not as easily, and it's very difficult. Things are hard topics right now for the our world and our country. Civil rights. I didn't anticipate some of the civil rights that would be going on today. I definitely realized I took them for granted the majority of my life. I didn't think they would ever come in question again. So for this exhibition and to be in my hometown, I get to kind of bring my artwork and like that concept of these things that were taken from us, that we can bring them back. That it's okay that I finally understood what that gender issue was for me, and that to me it's beautiful that my culture embodies that. That a very strong spiritual person, and for us, our two spirit people, for my specific tribe. I can't talk for all the other tribes, but like we have a very the spiritual side to that is very important for us. That we are typically our medicine keepers, and we would help people in that transition from life to death. And I realized my family had always been doing that without it having the naming of that. So my family, my parents are buried there. We still have our allotment land and the Choctaw Nation. That was the land we received after Indian removal. That's my grandfather's. And so that land, that's where he's actually buried. I have a brother buried there. So that land is, the land we're from and where we were literally put back into after removal. And so knowing all of that, going all of that into there, um, all of that also goes into my artwork. But so that graveyard where everyone's buried. So my growing up, my grandfather was always taking care of it. And then when he passed, my mother was the oldest child. So then my mother and like we all would do it, my aunts and everybody would be there, but he would be the one leading it. Well, and then my mother became, and then over the years, it kind of just dwindled down. Like my aunt stopped doing it. And it kind of just became just my mom and one of her sisters. So one of my cousins, he still goes and like works on it too. His name's Robbie. So some of us, but not our larger family like it had been. I think that happens sometimes when our matriarch people pass away. Um, and so, uh, so then like I had always my whole life helped, upkeep with that as well, especially with my parents being there, my siblings as well. And so now we take care of, all of our loved ones that have passed away in that capacity. And then when I learned um, about probably in graduate school, I had to do research and learn about like the burial practices, the funerary practices of my specific tribe. That's kind of when I learned all those things and how we did like scaffolding to um, kinda like a cremation process. We would, put our bodies there, and then it was our two-spirit people, they were called bone pickers, would do that, wash the bodies right after, and do that whole transition of life to death, and take care of them, and then upkeep after, and really, it just struck me hard that I was like, "That has to be my family," because that's what we already do. Um, I've helped so many family members, like, with on the birthing side, on, not really a doula. I have no, certification to do that, but just being there with them and that support. So those transitions between life and death, that, medicine. My daughter has even, she now, does our cedar and sage, and she's learned to give medicine, as well, and it's just And she's also a part of we have a youth group for Two-Spirit LGBTQIA youth, and she's, actually their youngest member for that. And it's just, I never, like, told her to do these things. I didn't expect to see her giving medicine to people. The woman that gives medicine to me was just with her and decided, like, "Hey, do you wanna do this too?" She just felt that my daughter Jewel, like, it was in line for her. So it was really special for me, and so that's what our Two-Spirit people are for us. That life and death, the birth, the final, the end. Like, when both my parents passed away, like, I did my mom's makeup, I did her hair, I braided my dad's hair for him, like, I was in the funeral homes doing these. Our funeral homes, the family the one we use, it was family, that, like, I had known my whole life, and so we had that connection, and they're also Uchee Creek, not the same tribe as me, but a different one. So I was, able to have those type of funerals for my parents, both, like, my family is Catholic at St. Catherine's in Tulsa, so my parents, we would have their, the normal funeral there in the church, and then we would go down to the Choctaw Nation and have our, like, Choctaw parts. And their church was so amazing, like, they let me have people come in and sing in Choctaw in the church. I grew up in that church as well. So, of course, they, like, a lot of them had known me, a lot of the elders still knew me. Um, I just really always appreciated that they didn't, they didn't call it, like, heathen or anything, like, negative. Some of the negative stuff we get taught about our culture and that it was just not those things. I just love that they always let us, like, include both always, and uh, sorry, that was a long way to get around it, so, like, being a
Oh,
two-spirit
no.
person is weird. So that's what all the artwork I always do that, I always get to talk about that a lot, and, uh, it's I think it's a good way people, I think, understand that more instead of, like, it helps me define the difference between, like, I don't consider myself a trans person, um but I have a sibling that does, so kind of the difference between the 2, and I just don't ever wanna, like, speak for a community that I'm not a part of.
No, yeah, I can understand that. Um, and so with that being said, what are you hoping that people like gain from this exhibit?
Um, Kind of all those concepts, I would love for people to kinda understand what a two-spirit person is for me as a Choctaw woman, kind of the spirituality side of that it's not just a gender like, nomenclature, that it's, the roles that our two-spirit people held, that if people think of that concept of that people have to embody, like, single mothers also have to embody a little bit more of that masculine, we're filling in at times, for those things. I would love for people to see the artwork and see that we're contemporary Native artists, that our artwork would not have always looked exactly like what it did pre-contact. That's how we're shown a lot in media, that we're also shown as, like, Southwestern art very often, either, like, plains tribal or totem poles, headdresses, Southwest turquoise, those things people associate with Native American art, and when people look at my art, they're always like, "Well, this doesn't even look Native." So that kinda goes into that topic a lot as to, well, our artwork would also still be contemporary, like, there was a time we didn't even have paper, we did everything on hides. There was a time we only had, like, clay. W a lot of our art was actually just utilitarian objects for us. They were meant to be used and then go back into the earth. So when people view my art, I get to talk a lot about those concepts. Um, Gardening and ancestral seed gardening has been, always been such a huge part of, like, my family. I grew up gardening, both sides of my family. It's integrated in my art. I do so much nature. Um, I do a lot of transformative, like, butterfly type images. I have specific plants I use. I do a lot of work with our Choctaw ancestral seeds, and then it's our Isito squash. That squash plant, those seeds were brought here during Indian removal. So the women had literally either braided it into their hair so that they couldn't find it, the army's moving them, or they had literally sewn it into the hems of their aprons, their skirts, so all they could and they didn't know where they were going when they left, the southeast part of the US. They didn't know if they were gonna survive, but that they were going through that, like, immense turmoil, like, the forced removal, and they still thought to bring seeds so that they could feed their descendants. Like, we have that 7th generation concept. The 7th generation concept is everything you do today will affect the next 7 generations coming after you. So whether you do bad things or good things, those things are gonna affect 7 generations into the future. And so that all they already had that foresight, and so they wanted to be able to feed people where they were going. And so when I grow those seeds that my tribe has been able to, like, keep a hold of, like, literally, like, grown them with my daughter's been in the earth, we've eaten that squash, that one specifically, it just really I think when I watched my daughter plant with me, it was like, "How can you be living through genocide and think to save seeds so you can feed other people?" Like, I can't I can't that's a very I don't know if I would just be so frantic and trying not to be murdered. Like, but they did that, and so I feel like I had to make art about that. I have to tell that story. I have to, honor my ancestors for doing that, for keeping us alive to do that today. I wouldn't be here without that. And my tribe may not be in existence without people saving those. So for me, gardening and seeds and plants, pollinators are just such a big part of my culture, my life today that's what I make of my art. I also like to bring beautiful things. I feel like I make you could call it like pretty art. I like florals. And I think that's good if people are just looking to buy art that's going to look pretty in your house, above a couch, offices. I think I cross over for that. Like people don't really have to know anything about me and they can just be like, "Oh, that's pretty." And I'm actually okay with that. Like I don't have to have a deeper meeting if they like it or if they don't like it, that's okay too. Not everybody has to like it. But if people want to know about like why I created the art, what it means to me, then of course I can get into all of those stories and reasons why. I mean, we kind of have that as native artists. People want those stories. People want to know why you're making it. We've kind of seen because I do gallery shows, I do museum exhibitions. Some a lot of times in non-native spaces, and so a lot of times I'll be like either the only native artist, or the only woman artist, or the only artist of color, and I can be in an entirely non-native space for that. And then I have to kinda, like, make sure people aren't tokenizing me, making sure people, I'll inevitably, because of being in Oklahoma and where the Tulsa Arts District being so close, there's a lot of racism still today, unfortunately. And so, like, I'll get racist comments often. People always wanna know what kind of Indian I am, and I really hate that question because I'm not from India. I'm definitely I have a specific tribe, um, and I not that I'm not so proud of who I am, I just wish sometimes in a formal art setting that we could talk about my art instead of my skin color would be nice sometimes, but I can't. That's, um that was a wish I gave up a very long time ago, and then I realized I need to get over that, which I did because I realized Um, I can't take my skin off, so I'm gonna have to, like, embody that and understand I'm gonna get that question the whole rest of my life. So
Mm,
so
yeah.
will my daughter, so I have to give her a good example of how do we handle that? Because 'Cause she'll handle it as well, she's very dark-skinned like I am. People always ask her as well, so it'll be, it's always learning. You, like, learn it, and if you can you can figure out how to, like, either use it for positive or use it for negative, so I'm trying to use it for a positive.
Mm. No, that's good. That's good to use it as a positive. Is there any
Yeah.
particular piece in this exhibit that stands out to you that, like, has a special place in your heart?
Yeah, so this piece I made, it's called Rainbow Basket Weave. But I've never, until this year actually, sorry, until last fall, I had never made a basket. It wasn't a art form I had ever tried, I'd always found it interesting, I just had always done other art things. And so, had the opportunity to do that, and then I was again commissioned by my tribe to do a piece, it's the Ho Chi Town piece, and it is like, almost 30 feet tall at one spot. It's a very large piece, and it was ended up being a digital art piece because it would've been too difficult because of how high it was for me to actually get up there and paint, and they wanted me to do something that wasn't like a cultural like, no cultural symbology. They didn't want anything that wouldn't have been okay to be around gambling and alcohol. Totally understand that, and I appreciated that they were really conscious of that and careful with what imagery they were putting up in a casino, and so I created a new pattern, for basket weaving that wasn't part of anything I'd ever seen in any of the research of our ancestors, still basket weaving, still Choctaw basket weaving because I'm Choctaw, and so I made that, and that was very neutral. They had me do earth tones, and I was like, it was beautiful, and I love that piece. I love for people to send me photos of it. And so I wanted to do something more me. I love color. And so I kind of redid it and then made new iterations and changed the pattern a little and made it into like a rainbow pattern. Um, as a two-spirit woman, I wanted to show that I guess the contemporary of Native art, what it is, what Choctaw art looks like, and incorporate something from my past, like my ancestors, the basket weaving, but then add in all the color because they weren't multicolored like the pieces. They were all neutral because it would have been like river cane and reed, and so natural fibers, and they're not always, unless you dye them with like indigo or other natural things, they're typically not super bright. And so I just wanted to do that, and I feel like that piece is a good not necessarily self-portrait, but it feels like me. It's like a nice if I was one of my pieces, I guess that's a good one because it's both the past and the present and nice and bright and colorful, um, and I think it people, can visually see it and be like, "That's Native American artwork," more so than the florals even. Not that my artwork has to be native pattern to be look that way, but for me personally, um, I I just love that piece, and so that's probably for this exhibition, it embodies the name Shilombish Tuklo, that's the two-spirit in Choctaw, those words. So it was a nice I think it embodies that.
Yeah. So, kind of as we wrap this up, I want to make sure that I'm hearing everything properly, from you. That so this idea of being two spirited is it seems like it has like a few layers to it, where it's representing your identity within this binary space. It's representing the culture and how there are, certain roles that are played at certain times. So there's like this cultural aspect of it, and then kind of wrapping it up with like the spirit, the energy, where there's, a two-sidedness of the masculine and the feminine. Am I getting the two-sided part right? Am I kind of close?
You're great. You're, like, right on, and then, our relationship with creator, our earth medicines, like the cedars and sages, the teas we drink, our ancestral foods, like those types of medicines. Those are the medicines I use. Food medicine, growing in the garden, plant medicine, uh and then song, and then art. Art is medicine and, being in communion both with, like, creator, things we have on the earth, taking care of those things. We have the responsibility to take care of the earth, take care of each other, our ancestors, our elder like, all that community, I feel like that's just, to me, that's genuinely or generally being a good person, but as, a lot of that kinda goes away in our world today, I try to fight for that as much as I can and try to do those things. Obviously, never gonna be a perfect person. There's, like, always we can always do more, and, I think just the active consciousness of trying, though, is very important.